best-selling computer game in the UK in the 1980s is RoboCop. On Amigos, everything Amiga. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're talking about RoboCop. Aaron, if we have electric, robotic things in our lives these days. We're in the age of robots.
Yeah.
We've got robots that can mow your lawn.
We do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Where do I get it?
Well, you gotta pay this thing called money for them.
No!
Something that you're want to do. We got robots that wash our cars for us, you know?
Okay.
I know that whenever you're down in the canteen with the boys in blue at the KSP, there's a lot of chit chat about whether the robotic cops are coming from their jobs, right?
Well, I don't really hang out with the cops that often, but when
You
I
are
do
a
hang
cop.
out, no, absolutely not. I'm sort of an affiliate. It's like, would you call the people that work on RoboCop's chassis, are they cops, or are they just geeks that work on that's what I am, basically.
You know, that's a pretty good comparison. That's
Yeah.
a good comparison.
I do talk to the police sometimes. You know, I had a feeling you might go down this road, especially because I obviously work with a lot of policemen. Being a police officer is a real tough job, and it's double dangerous, too.
Yeah.
It's dangerous for a bunch of reasons. Like, you can just, number one, get shot. You're on the road a lot, so you just have a wreck randomly, or get beat up. I've had guys get exposed to, like, drugs just by, like, picking up gloves and stuff, and they have to go to the hospital. And it's also a job where you have to make snap decisions with, like, basically no time to think. So, like, training is super vital, right?
Right.
And so if you add all those jobs together, for a human, that's tough going. And so if you could program a robot to do all that stuff, well, you might have something, but the problem is I don't think it'll ever happen. I mean, even this guy's like a cyborg, because if you just put a robot on the job, like Ed in the movie, you're just going to have this, like, big, like, impervious killing machine, but you have to be able to, like, make judgment calls. You have to be able to, like, think outside the box. You have to be able to, like, have a quick decision that doesn't necessarily involve rolling a chain gun full of bullets into an infant who's, stepped off the curb and you think it's jaywalking, So I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to robify the police force. I mean, the police force, you got a lot of good people in the police force and a few bad people that give the whole force a bad name, all right? We need more Joe Fridays on the police force than we've got. But with all that said, they are the thin blue line. And when you don't have them and you need them, you got a big problem. And if I needed them, I would not want necessarily to call the Microsoft Windows cop to come out. This policeman runs on a Windows 12. Oh, crap. I don't need that. That would scare the crap out of me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at these pictures of the what they're deploying on the battlefields of today,
yeah,
it seems like it's a binary choice. It's, do I fire the flamethrower that's attached to my back, or do I not?
Yeah, and most of them are remote controlled, right? I mean,
yeah, there's no room for negotiation in there. There's no room for tactics or a parlay, if you will.
I know you don't watch violent shows, okay?
No.
But I was watching the news a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about this robotic, like, combat dog. All right, and I was like, oh my God. There was an episode of I love this show on Netflix called Black Mirror. I love this show, and it often foretells the almost immediate future. And there's an episode where this dude or this chick or whatever is trying to escape from this robotic dog, and, like, this thing it's like ridiculously deadly, like super double deadly, right? And I'm thinking to myself, if these get cut loose, we're all boned. But you're moving out of the realm of, like, cop and into the realm of, like, I don't know, something that makes you stay inside with the doors locked and the doors nailed shut. You would be completely screwed. So hopefully the combat stuff stays away from the cops. But I don't think I hope during our lifetime we don't have to worry about walking up and seeing a Nokia lieutenant or a or or an eye cop or whatever. I don't need
Closest thing that
that.
I've ever seen to a RoboCop is when I first rolled into Korea, right? We're getting the bus from the airport to the university where we're having our training.
Yeah.
And at the toll station, when the toll booth was open, or when they weren't collecting money actively, they didn't just put like a sign up that said like go right on through. They have robot mannequins that are dressed like cops, and they're holding the orange cone things, and they're going like this. Go ahead. Go ahead. And I was like, man, it's the future. I'm living in the future in Korea.
How did that make you feel more or less comfortable about the situation?
Listen, I just spent 24 hours on a plane and then 8 hours hanging out at the airport. I thought at first that they were actual real robots and they were going to come talk to us. So I was in a different mind space. Um, but I mean, I really feel like we're going to see more cyborg type stuff. When it comes to like real RoboCop. Do you think that Can you foresee a future where a police officer might be endowed with, for example, one of those sweet Geordie LaForge helmets?
Well, I can see a certain future where, I mean, look, cops already wear battle armor with
Mm-hmm.
cameras, but rear and
Mm-hmm.
front mounted cameras. I can see a very soon having helmets that have augmented gauges. And I mean, look, consumers can go out, they can buy a headset with an AI unit that can identify basic things. We've seen Jack Black hold up his cup in that video and be
Mm-hmm.
like, "What is this?" That says like it's a coffee cup, and that's on the consumer level. So one would assume that there is something more advanced that would come in handy if a law enforcement officer had a helmet that could detect metal or heat signatures or whatnot. That would probably be super useful, or because no one could hide from the cop. You could see you
Right.
behind walls, stuff like
Right.
that. So I could absolutely see that more of like an Iron Man type of deal than a robot. But I mean, really, you're when you have a full like Iron Man type suit, a power suit, with even augmented strength, or RoboCop. I mean, you're really very, very close to having the same thing. It's like RoboCop without the guy having to be mauled and mostly dead before
Yeah.
he puts on the suit.
And I think that's a perfect segue, Aaron, to talking about this week's game. All right, Aaron, RoboCop. What is RoboCop? Who is RoboCop? Well, this all comes from a movie that was released in 1987. A lot of people consider RoboCop to be an action adventure movie, but there's a lot of folks. I did some research. In my research, I mean, I watched a whole lot of YouTube videos on people talking about RoboCop, and a lot of people think it's a truly great movie. Like aside from the sort of like good sci-fi movie or good action movie, they cite all of the sort of personal things that go on in the life of whatever this guy's name is, former RoboCop. I think Peter Weller is the name of the actor that played
That's
RoboCop.
correct.
Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll just call the real RoboCop Peter Weller because I think that it was probably based on his life.
Alex
So
Murphy is his name in the
Alex
movie.
Murphy,
Yeah.
yeah. So RoboCop is a cop that gets done dirty and gets mauled, as you said,
Yeah.
by a criminal gang. They shoot up his body, they shoot off his fingers. All of this is shown in graphic detail in the movie here, and this is probably one of the few movies that I have seen and you have not seen.
Yeah.
Uh,
I've
for,
seen
for
bits of it, but not the whole thing.
for some reason, I sort of took it upon myself a long time ago. This was when I first moved back to the States. And I was like, man, I'm going to watch a movie tonight. Oh, it's a RoboCop. Yeah, RoboCop. I'm going to fire this bad boy up. And so I watched about the first, I don't know, hour of RoboCop, and I saw things that I can't unsee. I saw a man get his finger blown off as he was looking at it. I saw a corporate executive get reduced to like a pile of chum on the floor. It's an incredibly violent movie.
Yeah.
Um, It's people when they talk about it, the violence is so over the top that it almost becomes a satire. Well, the movie is itself a satire, but they call it cartoony violence. I didn't find it cartoony at all. I found it graphic and disturbing, but that's just because I am who I am.
I'm surprised you saw this one, Bo. If I'm honest,
Well,
and
I kept waiting. I was like, the first the first scene that you see is when the guy gets totally destroyed by Ed, and then you see Peter Weller getting his fingers blown off, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to keep watching this. And then I kept watching it, and more stuff kept happening, and finally, like I said, I gave it about an hour, and I was like, you know what, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm out. So I
I've read that the director meant this as a he was not aiming to make an ultra violent action film. You're right. This was supposed to be like a commentary type film. Like you
mhm.
weren't supposed to get into the action or the violence. You weren't supposed to be happy or shout or jump up and down with glee. Unfortunately, it didn't come off that way because this is America. We like a buttload of violence, and so
That's
we're like,
right.
oh yeah, this is great. But I know that wasn't the way he intended the film to be. He was going for it wasn't a send up. It was like it was a serious look at things and a treatment that was supposed to be taken. I mean, you can see why people treat this movie like something that more than maybe others. To me, it looks like the old Dairy Mart special. You rent it one night with your buddies. But I could see why people would look at this. If they looked at it in the way the guy meant you to, I could see why people would think this is an important film.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, and like all important films, it wasn't long before the video game companies started coming knocking, because if there was an action movie of any import in the 1980s, there was going to be a video game adaptation. And who decided or who locked in this license? But Data East. Data East, Aaron. Data East, of course, had a track record at this point of producing several games in the same genre that RoboCop is in. You've got your Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja. Rolling Thunder, I would say is a similar game to this. So Data East was not averse to the side scrolling run and gun action. What they were averse to, though, was crediting any of their programmers. I tried to find any sort of material on who the programmers were for RoboCop, who the producers were, who did the graphics and stuff. I couldn't find anything. So if you know, please leave us a note in the comments. And if you know a place that we can look that stuff up as we roll through our Summer of Arcade, I would be happy to pony up for a book or whatever, because I want to know. I want to know who made this stuff. So, what is RoboCop? Well, in RoboCop, the game, all of the sort of subtleties of the corporate America takeover and losing loved ones and coming to terms with a new identity, all that stuff is thrown out the window, because guess what, you're RoboCop and it's time to beat up some dudes. I'm bad, that's right. So RoboCop rolls through a series of levels where he either punches or shoots an endless array of bad guys. These stages are broken up by shooting gallery levels, and you face the monster Ed. I think it's Ed 209 or something like that. You face
hmm
him multiple times throughout the game. You beat him, and you keep on rolling through. Aaron, did you play this game much in the arcade?
I did. I mean, I was at places that had it. It's funny. Data East had this gimmick where they would have these games that have a rounded bezel at the
Mm-hmm.
top instead of a flat one. And
Yeah,
RoboCop is one of those games that had that.
convex.
Yeah, thank you. And so it would jump out at you a little bit sometimes when you saw it. And I did not, again, I hadn't seen RoboCop then either, but I thought, oh, this looks kind of neat. I like Data East. You're right, I was a big Bad Dudes fan. And so I thought this looks very Bad Dudesy. And Data East, their game sort of had a look there for a while.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
another one, Sly Spy, was very similar in the
Hmm.
look of it. But I found this game difficult to the point of I didn't. It was, again, you've heard my philosophy on arcades. If the game is too hard or I'm not good enough at it, I'm not going to put money into it because I'm cheap. and I didn't have a lot of quarters to toss around. I had to play games I could put some time in, and this wasn't one of them. Now, I know this game got a lot of translations, and so the majority of the time I was spent with this is on the ports. But I didn't play it
Mhm.
all that much in the arcade. But a few times I gave it a whirl and never
Yeah.
made it off. I never made it past the first screen. That's for sure.
Sort of interesting. This game, being a Japanese title, was released in Japan first. It performed very well. I believe that it was in the top 5 most performing games of 1988 in Japan, and of course, the arcade scene in Japan was massive in '88. And this game was only sold as a conversion kit. There are no original machines for RoboCop, so that curved bezel and everything, that was all a part of the kit.
Yeah.
Um,
Data East
they had
marched that out with a bunch of games. So normally, when you saw that rounded end, you could almost guarantee that whatever had been in that had it previously also been something from Data East.
Yeah, yeah. They had this over at the skate arena when I was a kid. It's funny, I still remember they had 2 machines, uh, probably when I was in middle school, that I remember seeing. They had, if you went all the way to the back, they had a Galax or a Galaga, and then they had they had a RoboCop. And then up at the front of the place, they had the air hockey, and they had the Golden Arrow pinball machine. Remember the Golden Arrow
Oh
pinball
yeah,
machine? Was that there?
I
And
do.
so, um, I think that the RoboCop machine, however, was switched out pretty often. That was kind of the rotating place, because I remember seeing a Gauntlet 2 there, some other things. But I gave RoboCop a couple quarters, and after a couple quarters, I knew that this was not going to be a machine I was going to spend a lot of time with, because this is, if ever a machine was a quarter sucker, RoboCop is a quarter sucker.
Yeah,
This thing is designed to kind of let you get through the first level feeling okay. And then as soon as you get through that first level, it's insta death over and over and over again. This is not a multi-life game. This is you've got a life bar, and you are once that life bar is up, it's game over. Put in another quarter. So,
yeah.
um, this game is not rated highly on the internet community as a whole, in its arcade version. I believe that it's got a user score of 3.52 on the old killer list of video games, arcade-museum.com. And it's got a fun and so they say the social fun factor is 2. I would give it a 0. This is a 1-player game. The fun solo factor is 4. Aaron, um, as you were looking at this game in the arcade, not counting the ports, was there anything about it at all? I mean, you hadn't seen RoboCop. Was there anything about the game that really attracted you to it?
Well, I mean, it was a good-looking game for the time. And it had the cool RoboCop audio, and
Hmm.
it did have a nice attract mode, you know. So I mean, it wasn't. I mean, Data East knew how to draw your eyes. So I mean, I'm not knocking. In fact, I'm not even gonna knock the game as a whole, because if you look at their other offerings in this genre, you're like I said, Bad Dudes and Sly Spy. This actually had a little more variety than those, in terms of. I mean, but not much. In fact,
Yeah,
in
you
some
did
ways
have
it
the
wasn't. It didn't have as much, but in some ways it had a little bit more. But I mean, overall, it was good looking. It sounded good, but it still wasn't enough to get me in there.
Yeah. So just to wrap up our little arcade background, over on the killer list of video games, there's one record of this being sold in 2017 for the princely sum of $230. So
Yeah,
this
you won't get it
being
that cheap anymore.
I was going to say, this being a conversion kit, you're likely to pay more for the sum of the parts than the cabinet itself. I know that there is a PCB on eBay right now. Just the PCB is going for $250. The
Hmm.
arcade marquee, you've got that original arcade marquee is going for about 25. So I mean,
Yeah.
this is definitely not the most desirable arcade machine that's ever come out, but for RoboCop fans, I bet they're willing to pay top dollar.
I would say you're correct, and I'm actually 250. It's funny, back in the day, a board like this would go for, I don't know, $50.
Hmm.
Maybe. Depending on what kind of. I'm assuming it's a JAMA, and but
Yeah, it's JAMA.
yeah. So you could that people would pay a little bit for those. I mean, this game's like I said, it's not a dud. in the arcade. It's a Data East game. Another thing I didn't like about it, that bad dudes didn't have a gun, so you didn't have to worry about aiming. The aiming of the gun was the hardest part of this game for me, where you had to shoot up and shoot straight up.
Yep.
And so that was one aspect of it that I never got into, where you don't have to worry about that bad dudes. You just go and crush suckers. So yeah, I thought this was okay. It was a game of its era, a boater. And of course, when you got a game like this, there's going to be some hot port action, Boat. And hot port action did. In fact, me and Boat actually covered this on our Sinclair a few years back for the Specky. And it was on more than just the Specky. You had the CPC, of course, the C64, MSX, the NES, the Master System. They all got a look at it. And, of course, it came to the humble Amiga computer. Now we're going to phase into the Amiga. This was released in 89. Again, this was done by Data East, but this was converted over to the Amiga by a fellow named Peter Johnson. Peter Johnson, we've actually looked at a couple of his things here, Boat, that he ported over. He did Arkanoid. He did Daley Thompson's Olympic Challenge, Morph, Winter Super Sports 92, and Whizball. So he's done a few things. The game's an OCS joint, and trust me when I tell you, no game was ever more, as you mentioned, no game was ever made for Ocean more than RoboCop. It was like exactly, it's like that's what they ordered up, man. This game, when it was released, get this, Boat, I found this amusing, and I saw people complaining about this in contemporary reviews of the time. This was 24 a pound, 95p on the Amiga. If you picked it up on the Atari ST, it was 5 pounds cheaper.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh, so, how strange.
Yeah, and people were not happy, including the reviewers. They were like, "What's this crap?" Now I haven't tried the ST version, so maybe it's $5. Maybe it's 5 pounds crappier. Who could say? Did you ever try this on the NES? By the way, I knew this got a NES port.
This is a completely different game on the Nintendo.
I thought so. Yeah. Did you ever try it?
Yeah, I tried it. It's bad. They tried to go their own way, as they often do. And RoboCop, first of all, RoboCop doesn't really look like RoboCop. And when your main guy doesn't look like the guy, that's a knock against you right there. But the level design is horrible. The controls are not great. Most of the time, RoboCop doesn't even get to use his gun. He's just rolling around with his fists. In a game like RoboCop, you want to be shooting that Robo gun.
Yeah. Now, right out of the gate, I want to say that the Amiga version of this has a pretty cool opening, like, graphical display. It's almost like RoboCop's turning on. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then it's got a digitized picture of RoboCop. It talks. I've read that the voices in this are not from the film, and they're not of the actors in the film. So someone somewhere did the voices. Who knows? And I don't know now. They could be from the game. And then at that point, who really knows who did the voices? But I read that. This is a pretty good... This is a pretty good demo, Boat, if you just let it run. Like, it gives you, it's a lot like an arcade game. It goes through, it rolls. It doesn't just sit there on a menu. It goes through. It shows you some stuff.
I was really surprised by the quality of the whole package. The whole package screams high quality.
Yeah, right up till you get to start playing.
Right until you start playing. I mean, it really is and for a lot of people, we're talking about 1989. This could have been one of the very first games that they bought on their Amiga. And when you're moving up from a Spectrum or a C64, you want to see something like that. You better believe you're sticking it out through the arcade or through the intro mode, the attract mode. You're looking at all of that stuff, and that's part of the experience. So I'm glad that that's there. Now,
once you start the game, you're greeted with a little like a news show. It's like a newsman talking about a riot going on downtown.
Yeah. And this is also in line with the film, because the film also, it's much like The Dark Knight Returns, if you've read that Frank Miller book, how the news media is interspersed throughout the movie.
Yeah. And so then it's time for you to kick up. Now, let's just go ahead and go after the elephant in the room here, Bode. This is another game in the tried tradition of using the gigantic frame. It's literally, if you took the frame out of this, you would get at least a third more screen. I mean, it wraps the entire game.
Yeah.
All right, and the frame, yes, it has gauges in it and stuff. They tried to make it look like part of the game, but it sucks. It makes the gate play screen, inches smaller. And this right here was the first indication to me. I was like, oh God, here
Well,
we go.
to me, the golden rule of sucking is not the HUD. The golden rule of sucking is if you have an ever-present title of your game hovering above the game, you
Yeah.
know that you're playing something developed in Europe.
Plus, added bonus, it's got the publisher's name too.
Yeah.
It's the double. So they've
Yeah.
got the game. They pulled off the rare double here.
Now,
And you should
okay,
never pull that off.
in fairness to Pete, okay, maybe he had to make the screen small to be able to make it run as fast as it does. Okay. I'm not, of course the Amiga is able to run full screen platforming games without slowdown, without a HUD, but we don't know what kind of time constraints he was under. So let's just say he had to make the HUD the way it was. At least he incorporates some eye candy in there. I'm using the words eye candy very loosely, but you do have fake gauges. You do have your power bar and your weapon thing down there. It would have been cool if he could have integrated, like, there's it looks like a fuel gauge in the upper left. It would have been cool if that would have done something in the game. It could have ticked down. Maybe that could have been it could have been synced with the timer, because there's a timer in this game that continuously kills you. And of course, putting the name of the publisher in there, that probably was not his call. Ocean probably mandated that.
How that's so ludicrous. If that's true, I thought about that myself, because I'm of two minds. Either one, they made him put it in there, or two, he's just sucking up. He's like, listen, I'm going to put this big frame on here. What's going to get me not fired?
Or hired again as a freelancer.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And so right out of the gate, and I thought to myself, why did they do this? Because let's face facts, Bode. This came out well into the Amiga's run, and the Amiga can do better, much better. This was a poor choice. All right, now, with all that said, how does the game play? So we both agree that all the framing is crap, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So how does the game play? Well, I've played RoboCop on several systems and in the arcade. And I will say that with a joystick and that had the addition that, this is 2024. So we've got the bonus of having the buttons configured to make it less annoying, and you don't have to hit the space bar to jump, and you can actually control this guy. I found myself better at this than I've been at any version of RoboCop I've ever tried. I could get all the way to the second boss without dying, without cheating. I could once. I mean, don't get me wrong, I died a lot, but once I understood how the game worked and how I could play it, I did okay at it. And so when I found myself, strangely, maybe it's because I've sucked so bad before, but I found myself enjoying the gameplay once I got into it. Now, I don't know if we even talked about what the gameplay is exactly. You play RoboCop, the titular RoboCop, as you go to clean up New Detroit. And really, if we talk about one of these stages, we're talking about most of them. In most of the game, you're going from left to right, and occasionally you're going up and down elevators. And as you go through, you're taking out punks. Some of the punks have guns. Some of the punks don't have guns. Occasionally, punks throw a grenade. The punks go down when you shoot them or punch them. RoboCop will shoot when he is clear to use his gun, and if the bad guys are far enough away, he'll shoot. If they get too close, he'll just rapid-fire punch, and he can also jump. There are power-ups that you can get to give you more stamina and increase your firepower as you go through the game. And that's pretty much how the game goes. It's broken up by a couple mini-games, which we can talk about in a minute. What did you think about this, Bo? You've played RoboCop on other systems. What do you think about how this thing plays?
Well, Aaron, my review is going to be real short of this game.
All right.
Because the version that I have had no trainer. And although I can easily complete the first level of the arcade machine, I could not beat the robot at the end of the first level. I tried over and over and over again. There's got to be a trick. I was going to say there's got to be a trick, and I could not figure out the trick.
I'll tell you. First of all, there is a cheat in this game. If you pause it and then you type in a phrase, you will get unlimited energy. Okay. Now I did
Okay.
not use this until literally I had one more go at this today before the show, and I thought, I'm going to turn the cheat on and roll through it. All right. And I went through a good chunk of it. Well, that said, it's funny because the first bad guy is the toughest bad guy you'll fight. Well, as far as I got into the game, because the other bad guys suck. And eventually you fight Ed many times. He shows up over and over. I've got a list of the levels. But what you got to do in the first level, he's by far the hardest. Your shots don't really hurt him. You have to punch him in the face. And so, right before
like a robot.
Right before you get to him, you get a triple shot, right? That's no good. You need to use up all your bullets in that. They have regular shots, so it's straight ahead. And then jump up and down and fire. And then when he gets close to you, keep jumping and punch, and you'll kill him. It's not that.
Yeah, because what he does is as soon as he appears on screen, it's not like he hangs back and waits for you to act. No, he's aggressive right out of the gate. He comes at you, and any time that you're touching him, your bar just goes down. And like I said, I tried a dozen times to beat this guy, and to me, if I would have been a player of this game back in the day, that would have been the end, because I would have never in a million years thought, I'm going to take my upgraded weapon and expend it so I can beat the bad guy, because that's normally not how it works.
And it's funny because in the arcade, that's not like that at all.
Right.
And even when you fight two Eds at once, it's not like that. It's never like that, because that's dumb. But here you go. I don't know what to tell you. There's several dumb bosses in this. What the second level boss is this bunch of guys in like a moving van. It looks like an Ups truck almost, except white, a lorry, if you will. And they just drive onto the screen, and then they just go forward and back up, and keep shooting at you until they're all dead. And then once they're all dead, the van stops and you're just standing there. Like, what's going on? And then finally, 2 or 3 other guys stagger on the screen and just kill them and the level ends. It's the darndest thing I ever saw. I was like, I stood there for a while. I'm like, what's happening? And then eventually they come on the screen. So since we're talking about, let's talk about the levels in this. This game actually has some stuff that the arcade doesn't have, but I wouldn't call it the best. So once you beat the first level in the Ed, then you get to the target practice mini game. The target practice mini game is just what you think it is. You're shooting at targets, and they're suspended from the ceiling. They're moving targets, and you shoot them. There's like a big weird crosshair, which I believe that carried over to like the third RoboCop. That kind of weird.
Oh yeah,
remember that?
Well, yeah, but that the third RoboCop game on the Amiga is a first-person shooter type affair. So
it's a much different game. We actually tried that at Amigathon one year. But anyway, once you get past the targeting, then you go to the disturbance in Old Town. It's exactly the same as the first level, except for that van I talked about. And then you've got the fourth level is another mini game, another stupid mini game, where you try to match up a perp's photos to identify them on this computer. I don't know why RoboCop's doing this. Can't a modern computer do this? I don't know why. They've got a digitized picture.
RoboCop's got to do something on his downtime. I don't think he has to sleep because he's a RoboCop, and so that's what he does at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
I've read that this guy's named Emil, and you've got to match up his face. Did you see this part right here with the face match?
I mean, I watched it. I watched it on a playthrough.
This is as fun as it looks. It's very, very stupid. After that, you get to the junkyard level with another idiot end boss. This boss is a giant bulldozer with a big clamp on it. Who thought this was a good end boss for this? You can kill him before he gets anywhere near you. You blow him away. I will say on this level, RoboCop gets a power-up where he shoots this big, like, fireball, and it looks suspiciously like the fireball the Golden Gun shoots in Sly Spy.
Yeah,
so maybe RoboCop has the Golden Gun.
It also looks suspiciously like something, one of the Turrican weapons, too. There might have been some crossover there.
Then you get another one of these wacky mini games. It's the old save the hostage routine, okay? In this one, you've got a guy holding a chick hostage, and you've got to shoot the dude, but not the chick, right? Seems easy, right? So you've got to get in there and do that. Well, you just basically target his like shoulders. You can see that he just kind of he doesn't do a good job of keeping a girl in front of him, and so you just kind of whack it.
He sort of does the boot scoot and boogie behind her.
What was this guy's plan, by the way? What's it? Is just gonna keep doing that forever? Like maybe RoboCop will run out of bullets
off the screen.
Yeah.
Once he goes off the screen, RoboCop can't see him. He's like a T-Rex.
Wouldn't it have been easier just to like hold the gun at the chick's face and be like, "Yeah, if you shoot me again, I'm gonna shoot her in the face."
Yeah.
Even RoboCop's like that's stupid. Then you've got another thug level. This one has another horrible end boss. It's a wrecking ball. Like a something, and again, you can shoot this thing before it gets that close to you. You can blow. You can shoot it like a million times.
They didn't even bother to try and animate the chain. You're just supposed to imagine.
It's just a ball, ragging around. And so the thing is, then you start repeating the mini games, which is not good. You're back to target practice. Then they redo the photo one, and then they also redo at the last level. This is also they shoot another guy being held captive. So, and the rest of these levels are just exactly what you think they are. They beat up some thugs, fight another Ed 209, rinse and repeat. There's 11 levels if you count the mini games, but calling these levels is very, very generous. They're more like, I don't know what you would call them, really short stages where you do the same thing over and over. Were they fun? Well, I don't know, kinda. I mean, they were okay. This whole game, I can summarize my feelings in it. It's kind of okay. That's basically the way I'd put it. If you can get past the shortcomings, that it's not very attractive, it doesn't play horrible. I mean, I will say that jumping with RoboCop is an adventure. He's not what I would call. It's almost like it's like what I picture of like if you put legs on a water heater and then it jumped around. That's the way RoboCop handles.
You got to think about the way that RoboCop is constructed. I mean, he's a metal man. He shouldn't be able to jump at all.
Yeah, but he's got mega legs. He should be able to jump real high.
Yeah, but, you got to go one way or the other, I guess.
And shooting horizontally and shooting straight up. What did you think about that aspect of the game?
Yeah, that's very annoying because it's not easy to aim your gun because your up also jumps in this game. Newsflash. And so being able to position your gun where you want it to go, and you just end up taking so much damage, so much unnecessary damage that you can't avoid. And this is, of course, the hallmark of the arcade game because they don't want you to avoid the damage because that's what causes you to put in another quarter. However, I really think that this game could have used some continues. If you're gonna emulate the arcade experience, nobody goes to the arcade with a single quarter in their pocket.
No.
And so I would have appreciated 3 continues to give me a fighting chance, but like I said, it's so unfortunate that I didn't get to experience the majority of this game because the first boss relies on cheap trickery to beat.
He's by far he's the hardest guy, and he appears a couple times. So the rest of the guys are. I mean, you miss nothing. This game shows its hand. Even the variety of guys doesn't really change. I mean, the same guys. Here's the guys with the green pants, the blue pants guys that have guns or grenades. And when these guys shoot, you're right. It's like a lot of times you're thinking, okay, I'm going to wait for the pattern. They just sort of wait for you to get anywhere near and they shoot. And so it's real hard to avoid taking some damage. They give you a pretty generous power bar, but I mean, it's still, I don't know, dopey. The whole thing is just, someone did it. It's like, I've got a job to do. Port RoboCop. How can I do this to where people won't riot, but I can get it done real quick and like earn my pittance, which I'm sure OSHA was paying, and that's what he did. No offense to the guy, you never know what kind of strain he was under.
I will say that this does beat the C64 release of RoboCop, which was finished and put out when it was unfinished.
There you go. What about the Coco version? You ever tried that one?
No. RoboCop on the C64 is technically unbeatable because the code of the game wasn't finished. You get to a certain level that you physically cannot get past. When you cheat to get past it, the game just freaks out and crashes. So
yeah, that tells me that someone wasn't getting to get done in time, and then they just said to heck with it. So at the very last of this, when you finally take out the guy that's holding the Omni president hostage, in the arcade when you do this, the guy, much like in the movie, he flies through back glass of this high-rise building and falls to his death. In this game, he sort of does that, but he kind of just looks like he falls in front of the glass in a lot of ways.
Sort of lame.
And the end sequence is exactly the same as with the chick, except it's got the guy in the president's suit. So I mean, I guess at least they put something in there. I mean, that's the thing about this game. They have some of the stuff from the arcade, so you can say, "Hey, I got some of the stuff from the arcade in there." And so, I mean, it's not the worst. And like I said, it is playable. I would say that that's pretty much as good as I could go on that.
I also like how they say, "See you in RoboCop 2." They expect you to purchase it.
They knew where their bread was buttered. But I looked up some reviews on this, if you're interested.
I am.
Lemon, they weren't that impressed with the old RoboCop. 5.82. And it's funny, I was reading the comments. I mean, there was no one else super passionate about it. But a lot of people said they enjoyed it, but they knew it wasn't that good. I agree. The people over at Hall of Light gave this a 62%, a little more nicer. And then their magazines, they were sort of all over the map. Amiga Action killed this, 58%. Amiga Format 73%. Amiga Mania Brother, 80%. Amiga Point of View, number 2. I love that one. 48%. Amiga Power, 32%. But something like the Games Machine gave this a 90%. The one gave it a 3.5. The average magazine rating after you put it all together, 63%. Now, before we fold the tents up on this, we did a little port comparison between this and the arcade just to show you exactly what the differences were when you played this. If you're watching along, what I've done was I just took away the actual borders and just so you could just see what it looked like side by side. And when you take the borders away and you look at the arcade game, it is quite striking, the difference in terms of the way it plays.
I mean, again, this is a 16-bit machine. This is the Amiga. The Amiga, even on its best day with the best programmer, couldn't give you those graphics in the arcade.
It could do better than this, though. And I will say, I would not be terribly surprised if the majority of the people in, say, the UK hadn't played this in the arcade. I don't know how big a hit this.
Probably not.
I know the movie was a huge runaway hit in the UK, but I don't know how big the arcade game was or what Japan was doing when it came to that, if they were putting stuff over there or not. You never know. Much like yourself, I looked this up on eBay just to see what kind of action we could get. There were not. I thought there'd be a slew of these. I was real surprised. And I'll let you explain why here in a minute, but I found one complete in box for $54. I saw, and that was it. And I saw one that had sold for $7, but that was the only ones I found. Now, you said this was a runaway success, right?
Well, I read that this is the highest-selling game of the 1980s on computers in the UK.
Really?
And at first blush, you're like, well, that can't possibly be true. But when you start to think about it, this game was ported to every single micro in the UK. So no matter what you had, they had RoboCop. And RoboCop was one of the biggest movies of the 80s. Plus, it was based on what I would assume is a successful arcade machine. I think that this game probably did make it to several arcades in the UK. I think there were people that were playing it. There were people that were itching to get this home and have some sort of RoboCop experience at home. And, like you said, no matter what version of RoboCop you play, except for the NES version, which is horrible, they're all sort of okay. RoboCop on the Spectrum, it's okay. RoboCop on the Amiga, it's fine. So, that sort of, I wouldn't say praise, but that sort of, ambient benevolence is it probably spurred on some additional sales.
It's mediocrity mania, run a wild.
That's right.
It's funny. I looked at a lot of different versions of this. I was like, this Amiga version is so kind of janky. Maybe he based it on something, but it's not even really like the Atari version. I mean, the Atari version also is sort of boxed up, but they don't really look that similar. So I don't know what was going on here. I have no idea what was happening, but you get what you get.
Yeah, it would be interesting if you overlaid the HUD with this and the Amstrad or the Spectrum version and just saw maybe if they were drawing the graphics.
They don't look the same.
Ratios. Okay.
Yeah, I looked at them. They really don't look that similar. So it's one would maybe this guy just freewheeled a boat, You never know. So if you want a robotic adventure of freewheeling mediocrity, then we would recommend RoboCop, a game who crosses all borders because it has borders on every side.
Welcome to Retro Rewind. I'm your host, British Jones. Whether you're into the Amiga, Commodore 64, or Tiger floral print speed suits, Retro Rewind has all you need from the friendly hosers of the Great White North. Looking to upgrade your Amiga? Check out the Amiga OS 3.2.2 Kickstart ROM for just $18. Or maybe you need a C64 or C128 diagnostic harness. Grab one while they're hot. Don't miss our best sellers like the 1541 Transit Card for just $1, or the incredible Amiga Coin Cell Battery Adapter. Shop now at Retro Rewind Limited and bring your classic computers back to life. Retro Rewind Limited. Frank's the man.
All right, Aaron, we are getting ready to unveil next week's game. We hope you're enjoying the Amigos Summer of Arcade. This is where we take a look at arcade classics all summer long. Aaron, what's on the docket for next week?
Let's find out, bud. Oh, yes. One of my personal favorite arcade games of all time. It's the beloved Phoenix, Tato's Phoenix, bud. What do you think about this one? You excited?
Well, this is a new release. I think this came out earlier this year.
Yeah.
So I'll be happy to take a look at it and see how it stacks up against the arcade original. My guess is that it's going to be great. And of course we'll probably have to take a look at some of the other ports too. I always like to go back to the 2600 when we're talking about these sorts of games. See
Absolutely.
How it is.
And I hear this is just hot off the presses. I heard this has just got an AGA release as well, so that'll be kind of fun to look at. Yeah.
Nice. All right, guys. As always, if you want to support the show, patreon.com/Amigos Podcast. We will see you next week, and until then, adios.
Adios.
Amigos is made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Patreon supporters help choose the games we play, receive exclusive magnets, and get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. Visit patreon.com/Amigos Podcast if you'd like to support the show and join our community.